our voices, our views. This is our issues, our voices, our views. This is Politics in Black.
What's happening, family? We are back and we are live on another broadcast of Politics in Black, brought to you by the Lineage Equity and Advancement Project. That's right. What was formerly NAASDLA is now LEAP, Lineage Equity and Advancement Project. And that just kind of rolls off the tongue, don't it? But we are back. We got a new name. We got a new format, but it's still the same mission. And that mission is economic justice via reparations for our community, specifically the American freedmen. And so today's show, we're going to pick up that mantle, continue with that mission, and we're going to focus in right here in California. California reparations. Where do we go from here is the title of this show. And I could not think of two better people to be here in this studio, in historic Leimert Park, in the landmark Morris Media Studio. Shout out Miss Felicia. These two individuals, powerhouses in California. To my immediate left, the former chair of the Reparations Task Force here in the state of California. She's graduated from more schools than I'll ever remember, but among those, Columbia, UCLA, I think there's a couple other degrees in there, but I'm not even going to get bogged down in that. She's got all the credentials. She's as qualified as they come. And what we all know and love her for is the way that she led this task force with style, dignity, integrity, intellect, and grace. Please welcome back to Politics in Black, again in studio, Chair Camila Moore.
Yeah. Thanks so much for that amazing introduction.
Thank you for being here, sister. And I'm going to be thanking you throughout this whole program, what you did. But I cannot forget, sitting next to Camila, this brother here is known as the organizer's organizer. Ooh. He's down here from Sacramento, California, the capital of California, where his name is ringing right now in the halls of legislators.
Talk about it.
Because he's been working, he's been putting boots on the ground. This brother right here, everybody needs to know this name, brother. Welcome to Politics in Black. In studio with us today in Politics in Black. Brother, so good to see you. Brother, it is a pleasure, it is an honor, it's a privilege to be here with you, brother. Absolutely. And of course, with the honorable, my right honorable friend, Chair Camila Moore. Absolutely. And by the way, you won't see this anywhere else in the country. You won't see these two individuals on an interview together. You might see them on panels delivering information because that's all y'all do. In fact, I think every day I've seen you on something, Camila. Every day. You've been the hardest working person in the movement. Period.
Trying.
you being successful.
Thank you.
So today we want to talk about California reparations. That's what we're gonna do today, right? And I was thinking about this, and I said, "There's a way we got to talk about this because where do we go from here? First, we got to know how do we get here? Yeah. What do we do to get here? And there's a lot of work that's not public knowledge. We're gonna talk about that, but we're gonna talk about how we got to this point of having this final report, this 1,000-page report with over 100 recommendations that now sits with the California legislature and the federal Congress. We're going to talk about how we got to that. Then we're going to talk about where we are right now, right? I've heard you characterize this as a transition phase, right? So we want to talk about what we're transitioning into. Right. And then we're going to go, what's next? Because everybody's wondering that, right? Like what comes next for California reparations? A lot. We met for 2 years with the task force. We got a report. That's amazing, by the way. If you haven't read it, please go download that report right now and read it. But we want to know what's next because we got a fight on our hands.
Yes, we do.
I think you all agree.
Yeah.
So I want to start, Camila. I got to start with you because I was at that final meeting in Sacramento. I heard your final reflections, and it moved me. It moved like I was sitting there shaking. I was clapping so hard, right, because of what you had to say in your final reflection. So what I wanted to start today is I wanted you to reflect just a little bit on the 2 years. The 2 years, the 16 meetings, the 2-day meetings, 8 hours a day. The work that you put in, unpaid work, by the way. So let's stop saying that. Unpaid, right? She volunteered her time and did amazingly as a volunteer on this task force. I just want to give you a quick space while we open up to reflect on your experience and tell us how you're feeling today.
Thank you for the question. I think I don't think I've had the time to honestly reflect on the past
Because you've been going and going and going. She's still working.
Yeah. But the little time that I've had to reflect, I mean, it's just been an honor and a privilege. Try not to center myself because this is a movement that
Absolutely
consists of so many people.
Right. Yes.
So I don't know. It's been an honor that I was able to serve the
Yes.
state of California in the capacity as a task force member, but also as chair, and then. That's really all I have to say at this point.
Okay.
It's been a journey.
Absolutely. No, I'm waiting on the book. I know the book is coming. I hope you're working on that because I'm gonna be first in. I'm gonna be first and the movie. I'm gonna be first in line.
It's coming.
So, Chris, I'm gonna come to you because I want the
Talk
same
to me.
thing to you, brother. Because I know you stay nose to the grindstone. You stay working. So I want you to take a moment and just reflect for a second. 2 years, because you've been there. We were talking about it before we went live from the very beginning, from when AB 3121 was a resolution under consideration. You were there having those meetings.
Yeah, it was, and you're right. We started talking about it before we came on, and shout out to Tiffany over there. Tiffany, gave
shout
us
out to Tiffany Cross.
Tiffany gave us the whole history. This is really a testament. And first of all, I thank you for the question too, because I also haven't really had a lot of time to reflect either.
That's why we here, brother.
So I do appreciate that question for
Absolutely.
real. It is the right question to ask, and I think it's important for those of us who are in this work of reparations to take time to reflect when we have the opportunity to do so. So thank you for the question. This is really, to me, about everyday regular black folks, as we like to call ourselves, because if it wasn't for everyday regular black folks getting involved and pushing our local and state elected officials and even our federal folks too toward reparations, toward taking action for reparations, we would not be here. And I want to, in my reflection, just give a shout out to everybody who put in any work from from late 2018 and into 2019 and into 2020, before there was a state reparations task force bill that became a law that then became a state reparations task force and led by the Honorable Chair Moore here with us today. So I just want to take a moment just to say what's up and thank you to everybody who put in work, people volunteering their time, north, south, east, west, everywhere you was at. Thank you from inside of California, from outside of California. Thank you so much.
That's what I love. It's a collective win. Yep. I appreciate that, brother. I appreciate that. So, 2018. All right, we go hop in our way back machine real quick. We just gonna do this real quick. We're gonna look in the rear view real quick. 2018, we find out about a resolution. Dr. Shirley Weber at that time is in the assembly.
Yep.
You have a meeting. You, other members of the team, of the CJEC team, Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, of the LEAP team, had a meeting, and in that meeting was who?
Maureen Simmons.
All right. Shout out Maureen Simmons.
Out to Maureen
if you're watching
Simmons.
Maureen, shout out. We love you.
Maureen Simmons, we got to give her flowers right now while she can smell them. Maureen is the original drafter of the language that became the original version of Assembly Bill 3121, AB 3121 that you referenced. And Maureen was an intern in Dr. Weber's office out of UC Berkeley.
Yeah.
She had like a 6-week internship program, and Dr. Weber asked her, what do you want to do in your time here as an intern? And she said, I want to do reparations.
Yeah.
And Dr. Weber said, Assemblymember Weber said, go for it. And Maureen started doing work and research. Actually, interestingly enough, Maureen uncovered in her research that led her to draft a bill that there was already 2 reparations laws or related laws on the books in California. There was one that required state financial services companies to disclose their connection to enslavement and to the underwriting and the financial support of enslavement. And so any company that did business in California that had sort of a financial services lens. They had to publicly disclose their connection. So there was some legislation on the books for that. But then I think even more interestingly, there was legislation that Maureen uncovered where the state of California had already enacted some legislation to create a state reparations task force, but that put that work in the UC system.
Okay.
And there was never any action taken on it.
Gotcha.
So shout out to Maureen Simmons. And of course, in that meeting also got to give a shout out to the good brother Anthony D. Martino, who was also a staffer for Member Weber back then. So there was a lot of folks who did a lot of great work early on that we really got to make sure their name get uplifted.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's what we're here doing. And so going back to early on, because Camilla, I remember when I first came across you, it was actually on an organizing call for CJEC, and we were working on the language which eventually became SB 189 at that time. And I remember just hearing you speak and your perspective. I was like, this is different. She knows she's on point.
Special.
She's special, right? So I want you to talk a little bit about where you came from, like how you, because we on the task force, we fought for you to get that chairmanship in the very first meeting. I don't think people knew why we were fighting so hard. Yeah. So talk a little about your journey to being chair of this task force, because I think it's unique. I think it's special.
Where do I start? Well, I tell this all the time. Like ever since I grew up in Leimert Park, so I grew up in this ambiance and environment.
Homegrown. That's right.
Homegrown of like African American history and pride, and then I also, like, when I was a kid, I used to read slave narratives in the library. So like my mom would teach me about like 40 acres and a mule and this broken promise from this the federal government. So. Yeah. Reparations I learned about from a very early age. That's and right. Constantly kind of wrestling about like how can I contribute to this movement? How can I contribute to the movement? And so that's when I decided to go to law school after substitute teaching at LAUSD for like a year and a half.
Been doing good work a long time.
So once I got to Columbia, I was like, yes, because they had like international related classes. I looked at like their past academic courses, and I saw that they like taught on reparations courses in the past. But I got in 2016, graduated 2019, and I noticed in that 3-year that I was there, they weren't offering any reparations classes.
Look at that.
So I emailed the Vice Dean of Curriculum and pretty much asked for them to put a reparations course on the curriculum before I graduated, and he obliged. So that's how I was able to learn about reparations in the, I guess, domestic and international human rights law context. I guess you could say also lobbied for a faculty member to come to Columbia to teach on this course. His name is Jonathan Bush, and he served as my thesis advisor for my program, study abroad program in University of Amsterdam, where I wrote a whole thesis on global reparatory justice for people of African descent. I graduated from Columbia 2019. But that was in New York City, so I had to come back to
New York.
California.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Right. So I had to come back to California. So it's like, okay, I have all this knowledge. I have all this energy. Where do I put it now that I'm leaving law school in New York City and coming back home to LA?
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was peeping the scene, peeping the reparations space.
You laid in the weeds for a minute. Yeah, you laid in the weeds. Yeah.
But something I saw kind of what you guys were doing online, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should join a call and let's see what these folks are talking about. Yeah. And I guess you could say the rest is history.
The rest is history. And your good work will live on in history. And it's going to be something that folks are going to be looking at and studying for years, generations to come. So thank you, sister. I think you are the definition of built for this work. Yeah. The definition of God placing people in a position to do good work right here. So thank you for everything that you did. So I want to talk about the task force process a little bit, because I've heard you, Camilla, characterize it as you had a study phase and then we had a proposal phase, right? I agree with that 100%. But part of what I also see is that we had a pre-lineage vote and we had a post-lineage vote, right? A vote that it took us 10 months to get to, right? 10 hard-fought months behind the scenes. Like, we know what was happening, right? We know the pushback and the confrontations that were happening behind the scenes. But I want to get your perspective on that, because I see other post California, or as California was doing what they're doing, other reparations efforts were popping up everywhere. Yeah. The term lineage-based reparations became common parlance for us based on the work that the Reparations Task Force was doing. So I think that moment, March 22nd, 2022, right? I think that is a moment in time that we're going to look at as a flashpoint. So I want to get your perspective on the lead up to that vote, the day of the vote, and I want you to chime in there on the day of the vote too, because there was a lot happening, y'all. In case you didn't know, there was a lot happening. But then post that vote, we had to protect it, and we had to then build recommendations on top of it. So I know that's a lot, but give me whatever comes to your mind on the Lineage vote.
I guess I'll synthesize what I said at the genealogy event yesterday. I'll just summarize it. So I think that's a good framing. This past 2 years of the task force, I have been characterizing it as the first year was a study phase where we were studying all the atrocities against the African-American community. And then the second phase was the development phase where we were developing reparations proposals based on everything that we studied. But I think the framing of the pre-vote, post-vote is really helpful. Like you said, the pre-lineage vote, it took 10 months, almost a year for us to pretty much decide as a 9-member task force who should be eligible for reparations in the state of California. Should it be based on race, so all Black people regardless of national origin, or should it be based on lineage, so those who are descendants of those who were forced to labor in the United States? What I said at the genealogy panel yesterday, what went into that vote, there was legal and practical components, right? The legal component was, we're in a state that's a don't say Black state that we learned. We're in a state that has banned affirmative action, race-based affirmative action in areas of contracting, education, and employment. And then also we invited, as you all know, UC Berkeley Law School Dean Erwin Chemerinsky to testify on, the legal implications of a race-based standard or a lineage-based standard, and in his expert testimony, advised for a lineage-based standard from a purely legal component.
Absolutely.
And then he also predicted the outcome of the Supreme Court case in the next following year, the same day as our last task force meeting, where essentially the writing was on the wall. Race-based affirmative action was struck down under a diversity rationale. But lastly, the practical component was, inviting these 6 expert genealogists to speak on the feasibility of a lineage-based standard to basically inform the rest of the task force members and the general public that lineage-based tracing and eligibility is feasible.
Absolutely.
And people like Kelly Farish came and gave us really tangible guidance and resources for how the state can make reparations a reality via a lineage-based standard.
All right. No, absolutely. I remember that day, Chris. I
remember that day too, bro.
I remember that day.
That was a day, and and also just to add a piece to what Chair Moore said here too, because I think it's important. Chair Moore talked about the legal and the practical reasons for deciding who would be eligible for reparations, and that decision being those of us whose ancestors were enslaved in this country. The fight for who would be eligible for reparations actually goes back to the beginning. It goes actually predates the task force in many ways, because as some folks here will know, we were pushing very hard to make sure that the language in the bill that created the State Reparations Task Force actually was targeted to those who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. That's why it says special consideration for African Americans who are descendants of persons who enslaved in the United States. And so then the question that we would get was, okay, it says special consideration. Are there any other considerations? And so the answer to that was yes, there's one other consideration, and those are the descendants of the free Blacks who were in the U.S. prior to the end of the 19th century.
And that was directly from Dr. Shirley Weber.
Right, that was directly on request of the secretary, because she, from her, over 50 years of, teaching and learning and, knowing that California still has a unique history and connection to enslavement. Yes, there was slavery here in the state of California. That is absolutely true. There were over 1,000, probably something like 2,000 African Americans documented enslaved in the state of California, probably more. But we also had one of the earliest fugitive slave laws, where folks who were freeing themselves were coming to California and then were being re-kidnapped and then resold back into the South. So it was to protect the descendants of the free blacks. So the fight for who would be eligible for reparations starts before there's a task force. And this to us is both, it's legal for sure, it's practical for sure, it's also moral.
Moral, absolutely.
It's a right and wrong. Who else will we be talking about?
Yeah.
Who else would we be talking about?
That's right.
You know, this is and this is something that we've had to educate ourselves and our community on, and the larger communities also too, that we are a specific group of people.
Yes.
We are a unique group of people.
Yep.
We are a special group of people.
Yeah.
And it is also in our interest to be very specific and exclusive, especially when we're doing politics, because that's how you actually do good politics. You be very specific and exclusive, and you don't have to include other groups in your claim in order to get support from those other groups.
right.
That's actually not doing good politics.
It works against it.
Right.
Absolutely.
It can actually work against it. And there are some cases where you do want to join coalitions and join things that's going to be for more than yourself too. That's part of it too. But it's also cases, and if there's any case where you do that, is here now where you say this is specifically for us, this is specifically about us, and we need less allyship, we need more solidarity, meaning we need groups to say, I'm going to support them for what they want, even though I'm not getting a cut of it.
That's right.
I'm not going to take a cut. I'm not getting a piece. I'm not asking them to share with me. I just want this group of people to get theirs because I know that's what they deserve. That's what they owe. And of course, yes, it's going to be helpful to everybody, but it don't mean that everybody got to get it specifically. So this is also a moral thing, and it's partly why after we helped write the final version of Assembly Bill 3121, we wrote the entire version of first part of AB 105, then became AB 1604, and then became Section 14 of SB 189, which
you read my mind,
right
brother.
on,
Keep on going.
which will in this is
January,
early, so 60 days from now, actually
January 2024,
60 days from now.
So explain to the people, those that don't know SB 189, the significance of that, how it's connected to AB 31. Explain to the people what SB 189 does.
Oh, I love the question. So all right, it is, and I usually say this when I'm talking to crowds, when I'm talking to people, when I'm talking to the public, that it is infuriating to me, and it should be infuriating to people in our community and others, that our government doesn't even see us as a specific group of people. So after all we did for this country, after all we've been through in this country, you can't walk into no city office wherever you are in California, no county office wherever you are in California, no state office wherever you are, and just say and have an answer to the question of how many people here are descendants of U.S. slavery. There's not even a box or category of data or information on us. We're
invisible.
Right, completely invisible. We're not seen as a specific group of people. So that just, I don't say put reparations to the side because it matters, but let's just talk about how important it is for us as a people to have and be seen by our government, the country that we built, as a specific group of people. We deserve that no matter what.
Yeah.
Just as for who we are as a people. And of course, it is helpful to reparations in California to have a way to talk about this group of people and have a category of data collection for this group of people, because that will help the state of California find and distribute reparations to the persons who were enslaved in this country.
Absolutely.
So real quick, what is now law in Section 14 of Senate Bill 189 is language that will make California, starting in about 60 days from now, less than that actually start to have to collect data on descendants of U.S. slavery, starting with our state employees, starting with 2.5 million state employees. And this is important. It is a one of its kind piece of legislation. There's nothing like it in the country. Hopefully there will be more.
Yeah.
But this is really important, and it goes all the way back to where you started, which is that March 22nd or March 20. That March 2022 vote on who should be eligible for reparations in California. Actually, the State Reparations Task Force, in one of their recommendations.
I was going there. Come on, brother. That's why you here. I'm just going to sit back. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me go. So the State Reparations Task Force, in one of the recommendations, did actually in the first report that they put out in June of 2022, and then the final report in June of 2023, both support the state and of course the federal government actually creating specific categories of data collection for descendants of U.S. slavery. We modeled that language off of what is done for our AAPI brothers and sisters right now. Our AAPI brothers and sisters wrote legislation here in California saying y'all have to see us in our complete totality, meaning the Hmong community is different from the Cambodian community, which is different from the Vietnamese community, which is different from the Chinese community, which is different from the Japanese community. I think they're like 65 different AAPI ethnicities, and each one of them deserves their own peoplehood, as we say, their own specificity, as we say, and the state of California recognized that, and so did we, and so do we.
I love it, brother. I love it. Those two things are intertwined, as you said. When we were brought here, we were robbed of our name, robbed of our language, robbed of our culture, our God. And this is part of the repair of that, is the return of our identity, the recognition of our identity. And I got to tell you, when I was in D.C., at the Freedmen's Bank Forum, this was a topic of conversation. The data and the disaggregation of data that came up multiple times, and I had SB 189 in my back pocket, and I'm whipping that out on everybody, right? Like, did you know this is going on? Yeah. But I think that I know California is way out in front, leading the way on this topic and setting the stage for not only other states, but the federal government to do the same, disaggregate the data and then repair us specifically. We got a couple minutes before we go to break here, Camila, but I wanted to go back a little bit in the task force process, because one of the things that, I think the task force gets criticized about you, and I asked you about this, when I asked you, what is one of the things that you would do differently if you could go back, and have your druthers about it, do anything the way you wanted, and you talked about the communications effort. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because Chris is out there, boots on the ground. We're out there. We're still struggling to raise awareness. Like, it's a day-to-day struggle. You were there at that Lineage event yesterday along with Chris and myself. We're still bringing people in and bringing them into this awareness. And I think there was an opportunity missed by the task force to really go far and wide with marketing, with advertising, and getting that message out. So I want to get your perspective on that. And we got about 2 minutes to do it in.
I will say, hindsight being 2020, and I think I've recommended this to other task forces on, in different states or different municipalities. Just always do a public bids process,
there you go.
To ensure transparency, maximizing, transparency and all that. I think a public bids process is the best way to go about it. Because for the California Reparations Task Force, I think we debated, should we do a public bids process for, a competent communications firm and to, hire, organizations to serve as anchor organizations for us. And I think we just hindsight being 2020, we were like, oh, we don't have a lot of time. Let's just entrust, a particular task force member to do all this work for us. But I think hindsight being 2020, we should have took a step back, slowed down a little bit, and just took the time to do a public bids process, giving people the ample time and opportunity to bid to be the task force's communications firm.
Absolutely.
Bid to be some of the anchor organizations doing the work. Shout out to CJEC for being an amazing anchor organization.
Shout out to us.
But I think that would be, I guess, my advice.
No, I asked the question because, as I said, other reparations task forces are popping up, right? And they can learn from this process. They can learn from all of the great things that were done, and then some of the opportunities that we might have missed, right? And so, talking about communications, right? How many community events has CJEC run in the past 2 years? I lost count. I can't keep track of y'all.
It's more
everywhere.
than 50. It's over 50. Over 50, literally, for sure. It's probably more than that. Maybe probably significantly more, but it's over 50 if you count the community listening sessions that the task force asked us to do, and then the ones that we did in addition to the ones that they asked us to do, and then the information sessions and the panels and the canvassing and the actions out in community, and the walking up and down your neighborhoods with reparations flyers, and going into the neighborhood parks and stopping y'all from playing ball real quick and saying, I got something for you right now. And I would agree with Chair Moore that I think a public bids process would be helpful. So for those, and this actually came up in a panel that I was on a couple of weeks back at CSU East Bay, where the Alameda County Reparations Task Force was actually asking for some advice. And this actually came up, and I would recommend that folks who are doing this type of effort, specifically who care about the communications, start early, involve your community groups, and do a public process for the most transparency and the most accountability too.
Okay. Appreciate that, brother. All right. We got to go to break real quickly, but like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit us on the Cashapp or the Venmo, Leap Official. We'll be right back. Check out these ads. Oh, Leap LA.
Since 1994, California Black Women's Health Project has advocated for the health and wellness of Black women across the state of California. Here are a few tips to stay safe this fall and winter. Check with your primary doctor and stay up to date on your flu, COVID, and RSV vaccines. Stay home if you are feeling sick to help stop the spread of germs and viruses. Take a test if you feel any flu or COVID-like symptoms. If positive, contact your primary doctor to find a treatment that works best for you. Consider wearing a mask in crowded and indoor spaces, especially if you are at high risk for severe illnesses. Wash your hands often with warm, soapy water for at least 20 seconds. Cover your coughs and sneezes and wash or sanitize your hands after. Don't miss a beat this fall and winter. Take care of yourself and the ones you love most.
Oh, he's too late.
I got him.
What's happening, fam? We are back on Politics in Black, and we are back here with Chair Moore and Chris from Sacramento, the organizer. And my producer is telling me to always look in this camera. So if y'all watching this and I'm not looking at this camera, it's because I'm engaged in this conversation. So, but thank you for keeping me right and exact, Miss Priscilla. So we want to talk about quickly. Where we are right now. Because we spent 2 years to get here, more than 2 years, right? We have now this 1,100-page report, 100-plus recommendations in here. And I'm reading through these, and, we talk about this report as being similar or in the same vein as the Kerner Commission report. This is more comprehensive than the Kerner Commission report, right? The Kerner Commission report reported on us and said, hey, here's what we see, here's the issues. It did not give solutions that are this detailed and specific, right? So shout out to you, Chair Moore, for guiding this document, this masterful document. But I want to stop right here for a second and talk about it, because I feel like this is the greatest tool we have in the movement right now. And I want to get your perspective on some of those recommendations, as you helped frame those out. They're all lineage based from everything I saw, because up in the very beginning, this report sets out that we're talking about a specific group of people, right, as we heard Chris say. I just want to get your perspective on, across those, 12 harm areas, bubble down to 5, because we didn't have the data. We talked about data, right? But we need more data to get to all 12. But across those 5 harm areas where we actually put some, numbers to harm, just give me your thoughts. And what are you satisfied with the outcome?
Yes, I'm satisfied with the outcome. And, I often say, this isn't disregarding any of our Black intellectuals who have done the work to catalog the harms and atrocities against our group. But this does serve, this 1,000-page final report, as like the intellectual foundation, crux, justification, basis for making reparations claims, not only in the state of California for descendants of slaves, but across the country.
Yes.
And so I just bring that up to highlight, the importance of this document, as Chad mentioned. I think some of the recommendations that I would like to highlight that I am completely satisfied with is, for instance, one of the recommendations is free college tuition.
Yes.
For descendants of slaves.
I got an 18-year-old right now. I need that one ASAP, y'all.
Yeah.
I need a refund. Give me mine back.
At the UCs and Cal States, that's really big. As we know, Native Americans already have a free college tuition initiative at the UC, so kind of doing something similar for descendants of slaves. The other recommendation that I would love to highlight, again, to your point, is direct cash payments
Yeah.
to
Money,
descendants of slaves
Yes.
for those 5 specific
money.
Yes.
harm areas. Those 5 specific areas: the evaluation of black businesses, housing segregation,
Yes.
unjust property takings via eminent domain, health harms, and what's the other one again? Mass incarceration, over
incarceration, yeah.
policing. You know, I want to lift up those 5 because, again, like you said, those were the 5 where we hired public policy experts and economic economists to do groundbreaking, cutting-edge research to identify specific instances of the state of California harming descendants of slaves in those 5 areas, further crystallizing the recommendation that cash payments are needed,
Yes.
not just for slavery, but for the legacy of slavery, for specific instances of the state discriminating against Black Americans post-slavery. I think that's a
Absolutely.
very important distinction to make. And then lastly, obviously, the other recommendation that I would love to uplift is a recommendation that's already been introduced
That's right.
into
That's right.
the state legislature by Senator Stephen Bradford, which is SB 490.
SB 490.
Which would create,
Shout out Stephen Bradford. Shout out Senator
Shout him
Bradford.
out.
Senator
Yes.
Bradford. Yeah.
which would create the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency that sets up the infrastructure
Absolutely.
for descendants of slaves to get reparations in the state of California. I did draft it.
Yes, you did.
I
Put your
just-
foot in it too, girl.
Yeah. Yes, you did.
So,
If she's cooking, let her cook, y'all.
and if it passes, it would be the first state-based reparations legislation in United States history. So
Yes.
shout out to Senator Stephen
Yes.
Bradford,
Yeah.
who you can really see his evolution of thought
Absolutely.
from the past, like from the first meeting
Yeah.
to the
we
end.
We had to nudge him along a little bit, didn't we?
Yeah, so it's great to see him like fully on board with a lineage-based recommendation. I think the most important lineage-based recommendation
Yeah.
in the report.
Oh, come on in here, Chris. So, because one of the things that I said was, you know, that
Yeah.
this to me is one of the greatest tools for advocacy that we
Right.
have right now.
It
right.
is.
And I want to get the grassroots advocates' perspective
Yeah.
on this report, on what's in this report. Because one of the things you're also doing, in case folks didn't know, but the volunteers from Coalition for a Just and Equitable California are reading every chapter
Yep.
of this 1,000+ page document
Thank you, brother.
on Thursdays at 7 p.m. on YouTube.
That's right.
So even if you don't want to read it, they're reading it for you.
That's right.
So talk to us, Chris, about this
Yeah.
report.
You know, and thank you for saying that too. Yes, every Thursday, 7 p.m. on the CJAC YouTube channel, we are reading every page, every piece, every part of this 1,000-page report to you and making it available as a community service. Shout out to our reparations organizing and mobilizing team. Shout out to all our volunteer final report
Shout
readers. I hope some of y'all in the chat right now. Shout out to y'all. Appreciate y'all. Some of us are in the building right now.
That's right.
I see y'all over there. I appreciate y'all. Thank you. Chad, I think you're reading the chapter 2, Chad, ain't you?
I might show up. I might show up for one.
All right.
Y'all don't want to hear me talk anymore.
Okay. Chair Moore, we need you. All right.
Yes, we do. No, that's what we
as a
need.
special guest reader also. And, you know, this is, and actually to that point, because I actually had chapter 17 and 18 to read. So I read chapter 7. And I want to pick up where Chair Moore left off, because part of the recommendations are for direct cash payments, direct monetary payments, direct financial compensation, money.
That's
right.
right.
We're talking about money, okay? Checks, money. And I had never seen the kind of math that was done to put an actual price and a number on what we are, what we lost as a people.
Yes.
And in chapter 17, it gets, I mean, you know, and I'm gonna say this, people may not know, most people don't know this, but I used to be a math tutor
Oh, wow.
years ago.
I could have guessed that.
I used to be a math tutor, and so like you know, I was reading through the chapter, and we got formulas in there.
Yeah.
We got equations in there of like how you put this
Speak on it, brother.
And it's fascinating. I've never seen that kind of
Yes.
economic math to put a price tag on what we lost as a people. And this is to your question, Chad. This is a tool. So this report is a tool. It's a communications tool.
Yes.
And communications is very important to advocacy. So, you know, for example, if you telling me something like, well, we don't know how much it's going to cost. Well, actually, I could refer to chapter 17 page X, Y, Z.
Give them a page number.
Actually, I could give you a formula.
Give them a reference.
Okay, like I can actually point to an actual equation to.
That's right.
So
that's right.
So it's a communications tool. It's an advocacy tool for sure. And, we use it in those kind of ways. We also use it to, and I think you sort of allude to some of this too, because we're able to walk into places where we're talking to folks in the Capitol and elsewhere and say, this is the specific recommendation. See, a lot of times we do this is the problem, but we don't do enough of this is the solution and this is how we get to the solution.
Yes.
And so this, like half of the final report, the second half of the final report is all what do we do? Here are the solutions. And this report, 1,000 plus pages, is now in the governor's hands. It's now in the state senate's hands. It's now in the state assembly's hands. I know we're going to talk about what's coming next.
Yeah, no, we got to keep on, brother.
Right, but I'm
going to shut up. Keep on going.
This is exactly This is exactly why, and Chair Moore, I do want to give you some flowers here again too, because I don't think we would have such a strong report without you.
That's a fact.
I think that
you start right there. That's a
fact. Clearly.
Shout out to the DOJ.
Right out and right on shot, and shout out to everybody that worked on it and actually put it together. Big shout out. I know it was not easy, but the content. Mm-hmm. And the character,
yes,
and the composition,
yes,
and the creativity in this report.
Yes.
The Freedmen's Affairs Agency recommendation, which is Chapter 18, where it gets more specific about it. It will be the first ever state reparations body in U.S. history when it becomes law through SB 490.
That's right,
and. The way it's broken down, that's why I'm giving you flowers here, Chair Moore, because it was something like 8-10 different specific departments and specific functions for each specific department.
Yep.
And this is the infrastructure, as y'all said. This is the beginning. This would be the agency where you go to apply for reparations.
Absolutely.
Where you go to show that you're eligible, where you go to get your claims processed, and then it also has the extra of actually doing specific services for descendants of U.S. slavery. Never happened before.
Yes. And
also providing oversight of other agencies in California where they may or may not be actually doing stuff for us.
Yeah.
This agency is empowered to push those agencies to do the right thing and to work with those agencies and to coordinate with those agencies and to even support those agencies and actually doing the right thing. So that recommendation is powerful, and that recommendation is one of 100 plus in this final report. I mean, I think for us, and we've said this publicly, we are very much focused on this recommendation, the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency, definitely the direct financial compensation that has to be there. We have a saying, if it don't have direct compensation, it ain't reparations.
That's right.
We're not doing everything but the money. We're not doing that. Nothing else works without the money. Okay, let's just keep it real. Nothing works without the money.
I didn't even tell him to say it again. He did it on his own. That's what I'm talking about, brother.
It's crazy because And we know this, this is from work of some of the economists that work for the task force, where we have seen consistently that there are those of us who are getting college degrees and working full time plus and doing all and starting businesses and doing all the things that we're told to do, and we have less wealth than people of other communities who have done none of that. None of that at all. And so yes. We are not saying don't pursue your own, betterment as a person, whether you want to go to school, whether you want to start a business, whatever. Do that, please. Do what's in your best interest for you and your family. But that's not going to close and fix what we're trying to fix here. What fixes and closes what we're trying to fix is reparations.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. No, thank you for all of that, brother. And I couldn't agree with you more about, Chair Moore's contribution and the way that you shaped this to make it this powerful document that it is, to make it specific, to make it actually reparative, right? And that's something you set out in the very beginning, right? I learned so much from you in the very beginning to get to this point. I want to talk a little bit, because you alluded to it, Chris, about let's start talking about 2024.
Okay, yeah.
Let's start talking about the organizing that needs to happen to make CAFA, California American Freedmen Affairs Agency, a reality. Because right now it's on paper. It's a draft on paper, right? Just like AB 3121 was at one point.
Of course.
And we have to go about the work of making it a reality.
Yeah.
And we talk about this work all the time, but I think folks need to hear what's on the horizon. So talk to us about the grassroots organizing that needs to happen. 4121-1.
Yeah, let's get it.
Throw that in there.
Yeah,
let's talk about it.
So and thank you for the question, brother. I appreciate the question. I think it's the perfect actually placed to have this part of the talk. So generally speaking, I say this often, there's 3 things that's actually some of them are happening now. Okay, so there are 3 phases between now and let's say next year that we are all gonna go through. We actually in phase 1 right now, and this is the phase that we call the write the bills phase.
Yeah.
So right now there are reparations bills being written. Actually, Senate Bill SB 490 is one of those bills. So we're actually off to a good start. We actually have a head start right now because one of the reparations bills that would have been written is already written, is already here. And that is the bill to create the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency. That is one of the recommendations of the report, as we just said.
Yes.
So right now, and between now and let's say early next year, early to late early next year, so first quarter of next year, let's say, there are reparations bills being written based on the recommendations of the final report. And this is part of an answer to your last question too, Chad, where this report is a tool for legislators also to pull content from and create legislation for. And so this is the phase we're in now. Let's take the report findings and recommendations and put them into actual legislation.
Absolutely.
So SB 490 is one of it, and the first. There will be more coming. This is the write the bills phase.
Yeah.
The second phase that we're going to go to after the write the bills phase, let's say it starts sometime early next year to the summer, through the summer of next year. This is the phase where what we call the pass the bills phase. So this is when the bills that were written will be introduced and then passed. And to pass most legislation in California, you need 41 assembly members to say yes. You need 21 senators to say yes. Okay, so to pass most legislation in California, the math is 41 plus 21. Hold that thought for a moment. 41 plus 21. The phase after the bills get passed is what we call the sign the bills phase. This is when the bills that have been written and introduced and passed then get to the governor's office. And the governor will have the opportunity to sign these bills. And so what we say is the math in California for reparations is 41 plus 21 plus 1. That's 41 assembly members, 21 senators, and 1 governor. 41 plus 21 plus 1 equals reparations in California in 2024. To your question more specifically, what it's going to take from us as a people and as community folks who are supportive and committed and serious about actually making reparations legislation real in 2024. There are some things that we are doing now and some things that we are going to have to do. First of all, we are going to need as many people, everyday black folks, everyday everything folks.
That's you if you're watching.
All right, that's you.
Yeah.
Yes, you. Everybody and also community organizations.
Yes.
And anyone and everyone that's organized and that's willing to organize. We need everybody to come together in support of lineage-based reparations legislation. Okay, and so normally to support and do most legislation, there are coalitions of organizations that come together to support this, to support that. We need something like that, but like the state has never seen before, to make this happen next year, because we've never done this before as a community. We've never done this before as a state. We've never done this before. We need the largest mobilization and organization of organizations and people in support of reparations in California. And a lot of that work is happening now. A lot of the work is happening, on the ground. It's most of it's not public yet, but a lot of it's happening, and I'm excited about it. I feel blessed and humble and lucky to even be a part of it. It is amazing to see people come together to actually do this.
Yes.
We got support from here in California. We got support from outside of California. The whole world is watching, to be honest with you. And so part of what is going to be necessary for us to win next year, to get 41 assembly members to say yes, to get 21 senators to say yes, to get the governor to say yes, is for us as a people and community organizations to be working together to make strong, and what we mean by strong is lineage-based with money, reparations happen in 2024.
Oh, brother, man, I get tingles. Right? So I want to talk about that, because we know we got opposition. That's the other thing we talk about all the time, right? We talk about the moneyed opposition that we're up against, because they started to show their head, they started to show their hand a little bit here, right? Like we're starting to see them come out more in force now, particularly since this report, you know, this masterpiece was released, right? So I want to talk a little bit about a poll that came out not too long ago, because I've heard you both speak about this in the LA Times. There was a poll on support for cash reparations or support for different forms of reparations. So I wanted, because I've heard you both kind of say or give your thoughts on that poll, because I saw people blowing it up, say, oh, nobody wants reparations in California. I've seen it used as a tool to undermine the idea of reparations, but you both have a different perspective based on your experience. So I want to start with you, Camila, and get your perspective on that LA Times poll, and then we'll come to you, Chris.
Yeah, I think the LA Times, they commissioned Berkeley Intergovernmental Studies to do a poll after the conclusion of the 2-year task force. So Berkeley IGS, I think, polled like 6,030 California voters and extrapolated all the conclusions saying, you know, California voters say this or that. So Berkeley IGS like asked these voters like several different questions. I think the 3 questions that are of most note is, you know, do you think the state of California is doing too much, too little, or just enough for Black people? The other question was, do you think the legacy of slavery still impacts Black Americans in California today? And then the third question, out of the other questions that I won't mention, the other question was, do you agree with cash payments? Yes. So for the first question around, do you think the state is doing too little, too much, or just enough? The majority of voters actually said the state is doing too little for Black people. So that's a really good, like, that's a silver lining in this poll, that the majority of Californians think that the state is doing too little. I think it's Riverside County. That was the only county that said the state is doing too much for Black people. The second question was
we won't go too deep.
And then the second question around, like, the legacy of slavery. Majority of those polled said, you know what, the legacy of slavery still exists in this country, in this state, and still disproportionately impacts the descendants of slaves. So that's a silver lining. I think the only kind of negative response from the questioning was, you know, do you think that cash payments are a good solution? And the majority of respondents said no. And it was really the majority, because like the strong Republican disfavor of the policy like took the polling results down to like 59% disfavor it. But I don't want to get too complex, but actually there was some strong favoring of Democrats who are in support of cash payments. So I'll just conclude by saying, you know, of course, you know, the mainstream media that is trending conservative and right-wing took the negative components of the poll by saying the majority of California voters are against cash payments, but then negated to bring up the fact that majority of Californians are in favor of reparations generally as a concept, because you know, they agree that the legacy of slavery still disproportionately impacts descendants of slaves, and they agree that the state is not doing enough for Black people. So that just means that there's work that we need to do on a grassroots level to get California voters more acclimated to the idea that reparations cannot happen unless there's a monetary component.
There it is. There it is. I love that. Come on, Chris. Let's get your perspective.
This is interesting, and I second everything Chair Moore said. I think, you know, so we actually had a conversation with the pollster from Berkeley, or who was commissioned by Berkeley, or Berkeley IGS, or commissioned by the LA Times. And, you know, we asked him more about the methodology and, you know, their perspective on the polling. And, you know, I think everything Chair Moore said stands and is right. This was a poll. This was, I think, 4 or 5 questions that were included in a series. It was included in a larger poll about, you know, the 2024 election. So it was included in something else. And, you know, there were those 4 questions, right, that they asked specifically about reparations. So, you know, from my perspective, I think the cash payments question, you know, I have some thoughts on that. I think it was definitely, if you added the Republican, so like the Republican respondents and the Republican voters were like 91% against and like 9% not sure or something, and then but among then among Democrats it was split, and I think there was a slight favor of it too, but it was definitely split, right? So for us, you know, if you look at this means a couple of things. One, it is important what every California voter thinks, but to be honest with you, we are in a Democrat-controlled state.
Yes.
Okay. So with respect to our folks who may vote conservative or vote Republican, it is less. It's less. I think much of a focus for me. What our Republicans and conservatives think on this particular question right now, and more important for me right now, what our Democratic voters think, because these are the people who vote for the majority of the Democrats in the state itself. Absolutely. So again, I care about what everybody thinks. Y'all know we have we are politically self-interested, so we are, we're not with one party or another, but we do have to think about the political real life in California going into an election year, going into 2024.
Yes, there you go.
Where, I think every member of the state assembly is up for re-election. I think half the state senate, if I'm not mistaken, too.
Yeah.
And so, and then we have folks, terming out. We have a new group of folks coming in. We are in the second year of a 2-year cycle. So we're going to, start all over again with new bills in 2025. So I care very much about what everybody thinks, but I was very, very interested in what the Democrats thought, and also I was very, very interested in what young voters thought. Actually, if you look at the polling, our support was strongest among younger voters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Younger voters, the youth coming up, were very, very much stronger in support. I think it was a majority of young folks said, I do support direct compensation, monetary payments, cash payments, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
I support these people getting their money back. And I think this is I think important for us to frame too, because we said this yesterday at the genealogy event. By the way, shout out to everybody that came out yesterday.
Yeah,
we had a dope event. Shout out to the
Absolutely.
Beehives of the California Black Women's Health Project.
Yes,
big love. Shout out to the California Black Lineage Society, LEAP, of course, LEAP LA. Big shout out to the Office of Senator Stephen Bradford. Shout out to everybody. Shout out to our illustrious entertainment, Nita Watson and Diversity and the whole band and the whole team and the whole crew.
That's right.
Big love.
It was a function. It was a function.
It was a function. Shout out to I'm giving out plugs. I'm sorry, Chef.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead, brother.
Was
so
everything. I'm saying, but I think this is important to say and frame that the state of California Reparations Task Force is not recommending that the state give us money. That's not what the state's recommending. The state is recommending that the state return the money that it took from us.
Shout out Javon Scott Lewis.
Okay, shout out to Dr. Javon Scott Lewis for that I think perfect framing. We had money taken from us.
Yep.
We had wealth taken from us. You got to give it back.
Yeah.
Gotta give it back.
Oh man, my producers are telling me to rap, but I got so much more I want to talk
go.
to y'all about, man.
We should do
We're
it.
gonna have to do this again. We're gonna have to
two?
do this again, part 2, because there's so much more that we can talk about coming in 2024, an election year, leveraging this report, leveraging the work that was done, the groundwork that's already been laid to get us the first reparations legislation in the history of this country. And these two individuals right here, the work they're doing is going to get us there, along with the work that all of you out there is going to do.
And you too, brother.
You
too. Hold on, brother. Hold on.
No, we're not going to do that.
We got to wrap up. Bro, you are doing amazing work. Shout out to you. Shout out to the whole Politics and Black family. Big love. I want to give y'all flowers right now, too. I'm a big supporter of this broadcast. Yes. I love it, but I want to thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, bro. When your heroes recognize you, it humbles you. Right? So I appreciate that. But fam, thanks for being here with us. We're going back to our monthly schedule, so we'll be back in the month of December. I think we're thinking about doing a holiday show. So if y'all around for the holidays, let's come in here and spread some cheer, right? Yeah. But this has been another one on Politics in Black. Once again, hit the Venmo, hit the Cash App, Leap Official LA. Did I get it, Marcus? Leap LA. I'm sorry, Leap LA. Y'all forget everything I said. Leap LA, Cash App, and Venmo. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. And then before we get out here, I have to give a happy birthday shout out to Naya and Amara Champion. They both the twins turned 7 years old. Y'all, when I first met them in this movement, they were 2. So that just shows you how long we've been at this and how long we've been working, right? But shout out Naya and Amara. And also before we get out of here, I do want to give a shout out to Retha and Ali Harrison. They recently lost their mother, so I want to send prayer to them for strength and grace. We always want to recognize our family wherever they are when they're going through a trial or a tribulation. So just know we're thinking about you. We're praying for you as well. So with that, y'all, this has been another episode of Politics in Black. We back.